Maria, who is a nurse, visits the residence she used to share with her friend and lover, whom she recently broke up with. Later, she checks up on him in his personal apartment, and to her surprise, she finds him outside. Suso is finding it quite difficult to move on with his life after the breakup. Everything seems to have turned upside down for him ever since they parted ways. He moves over to the front of his house and sits by the doorpost looking miserable. Anyway, Maria finds him outside of his apartment and she attempts to have a conversation with him. They soon enter his apartment, and Maria makes an offer to give him whatever he wants if it will help him move on from their breakup. He requests to have their cat, Nico. However, Maria is not willing to give her cat up, and they argue over it until she walks away. Suso comes running after her, and he decides to let her have the cat if he can get to keep everyone in their group of friends. They keep discussing how to split their friends among themselves as they walk down the street. Who knew friends were commodities to be shared? Maria is already getting tired of the argument, and out of frustration, she asks Suso why his friends did not tell him about her new lover, if they are his true friends. Suso pauses as it dawns on him that his friends might have been aware of her new relationship even before he did. He presses her for answers. Filled with guilt, she spills how the guys were rowing a boat one day and caught her by the beachside with her new guy. This happened to be at the worst moment, when she was bare-chested and he was rubbing some cream on her back. Suso feels so heartbroken because even Nacho, his best friend, didn't tell him anything about it. He feels really betrayed at this point. Maria confesses that their friends didn't say anything to him because the person she was with at the beach was Nacho, his best friend. Suso's eyes and mouth remain wide open in disbelief and shock. Heartbreaking. Nacho has always been Suso's best friend, and they've been friends ever since Nacho came to study in Spain, when he was only 16 years of age. Now, the older Nacho tells his story about the prettiest girl in college, whom he and his best friend fell for, in the bar owned by Suso. Similarly, Maria, now in her 40s, is seen telling the story of how she fell for the two students. Let's get back to when they were college kids. The boys invite her over to dinner on her birthday, but Nacho refuses to show up and leaves his friend to enjoy her attention. Suso confesses his love for her, and this starts their 10 years-long relationship. When Maria ends her relationship with Suso, she has only been with Nacho for 17 days before coming back home to apologize to Suso. He forgives her, and Nacho comes apologizing as well, but Suso doesn't accept his apology. 3 years pass and Maria doesn't hear from Nacho until the day he suddenly shows up at the hospital where she works. She tries to avoid him, but there is no possible way out for her, so she has no choice but to greet him. She embraces him and feels so guilty that he and Suso are no longer in communication because of her. Meanwhile, Nacho feels it's Suso's fault that he can't come to see her. They spend the rest of the time talking and chatting about Nacho's whereabouts and his food intolerance test, the reason for his coming to the lab. She informs him that he will have to come back after 2 days to get his result, because the hospital is experiencing quite an overflow at the moment. Fast forward to when Maria breaks the news of Nacho's impending demise to Suso. He cries his eyes out, but then he also suspects it might just be a plot to reconcile them. Maria reveals that Nacho didn't tell her because he came to the hospital for a test, and they discovered that Nacho does not have much time left in his life. This means that Nacho is not making up an excuse to make his friend forgive him, or as an opportunity to see her. Maria reveals that she hasn't informed Nacho of the results yet. However, she wants Suso to be the one to break the news to his friend. Suso straightens up and blatantly refuses. He reminds her that he never wants to set eyes on Nacho again. Is breaking the bro code forgivable even in the face of impending passing? She tries to convince him to see reasons why she wants them to be friends again. Because if Nacho passes away like that, Suso will spend the rest of his life regretting that he did not mend their friendship while he had the chance to. Later that day, the both of them take a walk along the beach, and Suso suggests that since Nacho has only 2 to 3 months to live, they should keep the news from him and just let him enjoy his remaining days with his best friends. They continue deliberating on what's best to do since Suso is now willing to extend a hand of friendship to his best friend. One night, while Suso is packing up at his bar, Nacho shows up requesting a drink. Suso doesn't know how to react as he has mixed feelings. He becomes very anxious and continuously talks about life. He finally ushers Nacho into the bar and brings out some drinks for them. They try to reconcile everything that has happened between them. Nacho mistakes Suso's display of emotions, as though he knows of the recent happening between him and Maria. He reveals that he and Maria kissed the day they met at the hospital, so Nacho thanks him for being understanding and forgiving so easily. Suso, who is emotional because he feels his friend is going to pass away soon, suddenly becomes speechless after finding out what happened. Nacho is making it even harder for Suso to forgive him. So Maria decides to help in making the process easy and tolerable for him. She invites Nacho to the barbecue meant for just both of them, and then she sneaks away, encouraging the two men to talk like adults and get over their differences. By the time she comes back downstairs, Maria finds the both of them arguing and battling each other with words. How mature. She calls them to order, and Nacho requests to leave so the drama will end, especially for Suso, who is not over what happened. Maria almost spills the truth about his health condition, but she controls herself and covers it up without awakening his suspicion. On another occasion, Maria gathers their friends together in Suso's bar, and then she invites Nacho to the party, telling him it's her birthday. Much to his surprise, Suso arrives at the bar to see his friends in the building. Maria pulls him away and explains the situation. She informs him that all their friends are in on this as they want him to make up with Nacho. Suso argues about it because there is every tendency that he knows her real birthday. But Maria stands her ground that he doesn't, because even her boyfriend Suso doesn't know her exact day of birth. They argue over it before they finally agree and kiss each other. As soon as their lips touch, they reminisce on their first kiss way back in college after the dinner date. The applause coming from their friends makes them stop. Maria gives him a present to be given to her. Since it's her supposed birthday, it's only logical for her to get a gift from him, not the other way around, especially since Nacho must have gotten her a gift as well. Suso takes the present from her after she convinces him to go by her plan. The party starts, and in the course of it, Maria comes to take Suso with her to go meet Nacho. She asks three of them to make a toast to friendship, as friends are like treasures, but Nacho pulls away. He feels that it's as though they are talking about passing away. Plus, he comments that he doesn't want to be a treasure that gets buried like deceased people. His comment catches them off guard, and they wonder if he knows something which he is not saying. Nacho makes a creepy statement, saying they are all going to perish eventually, and everyone is moving closer to their graves. Maria still insists they toast, before announcing that everyone can begin presenting their gifts to her. Suso goes upstairs to bring his present, and Nacho takes a look at Maria and blurts out cancer. She looks confused as he repeatedly says it. She cautiously asks how he got to know, as she doesn't want to say too much. Fortunately, the cancer he's talking about is the zodiac sign. Her face lightens up, and she suddenly feels relieved hearing that he's referring to her zodiac sign. It's time for the gifts to start rolling in, and Maria receives a pair of pink roller skates from Nacho, who notices that she doesn't like them. He suggests she change them if she doesn't like them, but she won't want to reject a present from a friend who will be passing soon. To make it worse, Suso and their other friends start pressing her to admit that she doesn't like the roller skates because they all see the look on her face. Maria shuts them all up, yelling that she likes it. Suso brings forward his gift, asking her to open it already, but she refuses. She insists that she'll do that later when she gets home, because she isn't feeling like opening any more gifts. But if he wants to, he can open it himself. Suso goes ahead to open it on her request, and he is stunned to find a pink shoe inside the box. It means that Nacho knows what she needs better than him. His countenance suddenly becomes sober and reflective. Maria tells him that he is overreacting and it doesn't matter, but then she lies to him. After the presents, it is now time to cut the cake. Nacho asks her to make a wish before cutting the cake, and her wish is for them to reunite as friends. Suso ruins the mood by telling her that it won't come true since she said it out loud. However, Nacho takes the initiative to settle things. Before everyone, he goes on his knees and apologizes to Suso. However, Suso makes the whole thing complicated by making a joke out of it using Nacho's medical condition. Nacho feels annoyed already, and he blames Suso for his condition. The others feel the heavy air and ask to take their leave as their argument is taking a different turn. They sense that the two might want to be alone to discuss it. Nacho insists they stay, and Suso should pour his heart out right before everyone. Suso stands facing Nacho, and everyone insists on him taking his anger out so he can forgive Nacho once and for all. To everyone's surprise, Suso walks over to Nacho and smashes his face into the birthday cake, and then he declares that he is forgiven. His actions spark a fight as Nacho charges towards him. Thankfully, there are people there to prevent them from fighting. Maria shakes her head in disappointment as she watches the two men struggling to free themselves so they can attack each other. She yells at them to stop and orders both of them to follow her home. Upon getting to the house, she lights another candle, and both men sing her a birthday song all over again. Nacho enters the kitchen and returns with a knife, suggesting they make a blood pact. Maria looks at him and she suddenly becomes squeamish. She gets off the chair and begins to cry. Suso asks Nacho to sit down so he can explain why she's crying to him. Before he spills the truth about Nacho's health condition, Maria yells, "Carpe diem!" She tells them that nobody knows what will happen tomorrow, so they should enjoy the moment. Nacho likes this and quickly adopts her idea. He drags her to sit down and tells her to make a wish about something good, like it's their last party and the last month of their lives. Suso and Maria look at themselves, wondering if he knows something. Nacho begins to count down to 3, and Maria gets lost in her world, struggling with what wish to make. On the 3rd count, she makes a wish to have a child. The next day, both men are taking a dip in a lake. They start conversing, and Suso requests to know what Nacho misses the most, after not communicating with them for 3 years. Nacho reveals that he misses eating half an octopus with him, but Suso wonders why it has to be that, especially after 3 years of not seeing each other. So, Nacho explains that in general he misses sharing everything with his friend, be it a plate of octopus or any other thing. Suso misunderstands him, thinking he means he misses sharing Maria with him. He gives him a look that makes him unable to complete his statement. Next thing, Suso gets out of the pool, angrily walking away with Nacho chasing behind him, apologizing. Nacho confesses that he can't handle it because he thought he could, but he pleads not to end things that way, else he will be passing with grief in his heart. In Suso's head, he replies to Nacho saying he won't even have time for that. After seeing Suso so overwhelmed, Nacho decides to leave that afternoon. Suso drives him to the airport where he will be leaving for Istanbul, and as usual, he gets on Nacho's nerves as he insists that he follow him to Carpe Diem in Spain. On arriving at the airport, he bids his friend a nice trip with mixed emotions and quickly brings out his phone to call Maria. At the hospital, Maria is dreaming about a doctor requesting her help with 2 babies in the maternity ward because they are short-staffed there. She wakes up to find the doctor waking her up, and she is in a state of shock. She tries to gain composure and excuses herself to go make a call. She suddenly comes back to tell the doctor that she will not be available to help, leaving the woman to wonder what help she's talking about. Fortunately, she meets with Suso just outside the hospital, as they both need to tell each other something. Maria goes first and reveals that she wants to have a child, and this time she has decided, which means it's quite urgent. Suso reminds her that they can't have kids, even though he also buys the idea of having children with her. Maria leads him to the ward of a patient who is in a coma so they can talk freely away from distractions. She informs him that apart from his sperm being infertile, she had met with the gynecology department at the hospital, and they informed her that she had a congenital deviation in her cervix. This makes her incompatible with artificial insemination. The man in a coma, who supposedly does not hear or feel anything from his environment, suddenly moves his eyeballs as though he is hearing their discussion. Maria reveals to Suso that the only way she can have a child is by having a sperm donor who will have to use a natural way to impregnate her. Suso cannot bear the thought of another man sleeping with her, so he turns away. Maria suggests that it doesn't have to be a stranger, and he looks at her in shock, because could she be referring to his friend? Suso runs out of the hospital, almost running out of breath because it's too much of a request that he can handle. Maria runs after him and gives him an assuring hug. She promises that it won't mean anything to her and she will always be his no matter what happens. She tries convincing him that somehow 3 of them will have that child, even though very soon, one of them won't be around anymore. But if the child is born, a part of that one will still be in this world, and it will always be the 3 of them. Suso is in tears as he doesn't know how to react, even though he can't refuse Maria's request. As he struggles to process the whole thing, he asks her to promise that the child will not look like Nacho. Maria asks to know the important thing that he has to tell her. After he reveals it, she rushes back into the hospital and orders him to start the car while she takes permission to leave. Then he tries to call Nacho to make sure he doesn't get on the plane. On getting out of the hospital, Suso informs her that he called Nacho to tell him that today is his birthday, and Nacho promises to come by the hospital. She could not believe that he used the same trick she did. She believes that Nacho will not come back if they don't go after him. However, Suso tells her that he winked on the phone earlier while calling Nacho, and insists that a true friend will feel that wink, even though he can't see it. Maria drags him to the airport, and thankfully, they almost crash into Nacho, who is on his way out of the airport. Nacho informs them that he won't miss Suso's birthday. Also, he tells them he wants to know what secret they are keeping from him, as he felt Suso winking over the phone earlier. Suso turns to Maria and gives her a knowing look. A true friend indeed. Maria informs him that Suso will tell him what he needs to know, because it isn't a secret. Nacho excuses them, and they begin to argue over who will break the news to him since he will be the one doing the favor. Suso parks the car, and they walk out to meet Nacho, still deliberating on who will tell him the news. They break the news to Nacho step by step, but he refuses to take it in calmly as he yells at them for denying him the opportunity to be a godfather. More so, it will be weird that his friend's child will casually look like him. He grabs his bag heading back to the airport, but soon comes back running as Suso requests for his help with Maria, who is fainting. They get her to the hospital where she works and try to give her some water until she makes an outburst asking them what the big deal is about being a little dizzy. She excuses herself to go inside the hospital, promising to return in 10 minutes. Nacho grabs his bag after she leaves, and he asks that Suso drive him back to the airport because he doesn't want to talk about the child thing. Suso and Maria are important to him, but somehow he feels Suso only talks about unimportant things, so he no longer wants to talk about them. On the ride to the airport, Nacho suggests that if having a child is so important to them, then they should wait some months when he is back from his trip. He promises to think about it to see if he can do it or not. Suso gets worked up. He suddenly parks the car, grabs Nacho's bags, and heads straight for the bridge. Nacho chases after him in a hot race. Suso threatens to throw his bag over the bridge. He feels overwhelmed and doesn't know how best to convince his friend that having a child with his wife will be of immense benefit to all three of them. Left with no choice, he breaks the news of Nacho's condition and his remaining time left, but Nacho refuses to believe it because he knows that he is feeling great and healthy. For a moment, he contemplates that it might just be Suso's trick to make him impregnate his wife. Nacho feels triggered and he loses it as he tells Suso that he is less of a man than he is because it feels as though he only wants to use him to impregnate his wife, since he will be passing away soon. It leads to a fight, because Suso refuses to believe that he is less of a man simply because he cannot impregnate his wife. He launches at Nacho angrily. Both men struggle on the floor. Nacho eventually leaves Suso alone and proceeds to walk away, but Suso calls him back. He calls him a loser, even though he walks around feeling like a champion. He reminds Nacho of the dinner date with Maria back when they were in high school, and makes a mockery of how he refused to show up. He accuses him of being a bigger loser because he had to watch his best friend be with a woman he adores. Nacho feels saddened hearing his friend call him a loser, despite knowing that he will be gone soon. Suso asks for a hug, and Nacho obliges. They hug each other tightly and cry. What a twist in their fates. At the house, Maria is treating the injuries Suso sustained, and he informs her that his friend will be leaving in a few days since he already missed his flight. She suggests they have a farewell dinner with Nacho. Just her and Nacho. The following day, she meets up with Nacho in a restaurant, and when he asks about Suso's whereabouts, she informs him that he won't be coming based on the agreement they had. It's time for the truth, and Maria reveals that Nacho is not going to perish. She pleads for his forgiveness because she made it all up. Who could have thought it was all a lie? She confesses that she had planned it differently, but it turns out entirely different from what she had designed. She wants both men to become friends, which is why she tells Suso about Nacho's sickness, and then encourages him to tell Nacho because she knows that he won't be able to. According to her plan, the event is supposed to make them go back to being friends as always, and then bring up her desire to have a child. Maria gets to the point and confesses that she's the one who is terminally ill, and she has at most a couple of years. She doesn't know if she was propelled by her selfish interest, or if she was just scared that the two people she loves the most will spend the rest of their lives not talking to each other. She cries as she explains why she wanted the three of them to have a child, as it would feel like a part of her will still be with them, and the child would get to have two fathers when she is no longer around. Nacho is utterly speechless and in shock upon hearing her revelation. Words fail him completely. He walks out of the restaurant hastily because he needs time to process everything she just said. Who wouldn't? Maria follows after him and reveals that she told Suso about her condition the previous night. She also explains that she didn't say the truth from the get-go because he will also not want to talk about having a child with her if he knows she is terminal. She eventually convinces him to make love to her and get her pregnant. She shows him the Viagra Suso wants him to have because he doesn't want to take chances or have them try again. So, he prefers they have to get intimate multiple times at a go. Suso spends the night drinking and crying his eyes out as everything keeps twirling in his head. Meanwhile, Nacho and Maria agree to make out in the car. Throughout the process, she thinks mostly of Suso, while Nacho reminisces about the moments they all shared from their college days. Maria, whose cancer has now greatly progressed, tells her story and wishes her life was a video game instead of a movie. At least in a game, she would get an extra life. She takes off her wig and shows her head, which is completely shaved. She shares that fate or chance is inevitable. However, happiness is a point of view. So, it doesn't matter how her story ends as long as it ends happily. After the night she had gotten intimate with Nacho, she became pregnant. Thankfully, she survives and carries the pregnancy to full term. Maria gives birth to a baby girl, which she didn't live long to care for, but just as she wants, her daughter has two unique men to call her dads. They arrive at the location where she wants her ashes sprinkled, with their little daughter in a baby carrier. Both of them push their little girl to the middle of what looks like a church. They don't stop arguing as usual as they make their way forward, holding each other's hands for a moment before taking off their clothes to reveal their matching costumes. They are glad that they'd be doing it just like Maria wants. They lock hands once again and begin to sing a song in her honor while her baby falls asleep in the carrier.